quickly, I just want, with all due respect to the good Congressman Barbers, yung hindi po 1,000,000 yung namatay sa COVID. Ang namatay po is 64,000 documented. But again, tama po kayo na baka naman dahil nasa kulang yung testing natin at that time, na nag-uumpisa pa lang yung mga paglikha ng mga test, ano? Eh baka marami rin dyan mga namatay sa COVID pero hindi na document. Pero let me just take this opportunity, Mr. Chairpersons. No? As of today, yung global population na nakatanggap na ng bakuna is 5.55 billion people. Out of that, that's 72.3% of the total global population. They have been inoculated with 13.53 billion doses. Ilan po?
So you will not, you can, I think, Secretary, tama po yung sinabi ni Mr. Secretary, but you cannot deny as well that there are adverse reactions on the vaccine. And that's the reason why we are discussing this. Well, I believe that the effects of vaccine outweigh the risk. No? We subscribe on that. But unfortunately, those people who have died unknowingly, hindi natin alam, tapos yung effects. And doon sa PSA that I have seen, even 2022 and 2023, yung excess deaths natin, mataas pa rin. It's more than the usual 5%. As a matter of fact, mga nasa above, I think, 20% pa rin tayo. So, somehow you can have the correlation. But I'm not saying that it is actual integrated with that. But all over the world, things are being said like this. And we have to be somehow be more critical, no? Para sa ganun, we can be prepared on the next event that will be happening, you know?
Siyempre, ayaw naman po natin mangyari iyon. Pero ang kagandahan nga ng batas, nakalagay po rito malinaw na meron pong itinatag ang IATF na Special Task Group precisely to monitor the severe adverse effects post-immunization.
Co-vigilance.
Oh yes, lahat po. Meron pong pharmacovigilance on the part of FDA.
Yes.
Pero meron po tayong itinatag na Special Task Group precisely to monitor these events post-immunization. Diyan po gagawa monitoring, evaluation, investigation, and reporting mechanism. So yan po, malinaw. Kanya nga, dapat po ito, it should be appreciated, the law in its entirety.
Yeah.
And precisely as it recognizes the severe adverse effects.
Maputol kita, baka makalimutan ko lang.
Oh, yes.
So you were talking about yung mga investigative monitoring and evaluation and assessment of all of this that happened. Anong grupo yan?
Ito po yung Special Task Group. DOH.
Who heads that group?
Hindi ko na po maalala, but that is what is in the law.
Yusek Tayag, sinong head nung nagmamonitor ng ganyan sa atin?
This is a group which was labeled the National Adverse Event Following Immunization Committee, sir.
Oo nga. Sino nga nag-head doon?
I will have to ask my team, sir.
Sige,
institution that you belong to. Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Attorney Aaron Sogilon from Lunas Pilipinas and CDCPH. Your Honor, dudugtungan ko lang yung sinabi ni former Secretary Duque, no, that we have to appreciate the law in its entirety. In fact, RA 11525 is very wise. Under Section 13, meron talagang reportorial requirements. And and even the DOH has a protocol of suspending the rollout after 2 or more adverse events following immunization, not necessarily connected sa vaccine, but if it happened after the vaccination rollout, they will suspend it. They should be suspending it. So, sa sinasabi natin moving forward, dapat fina-follow talaga yung mga protocols na ito because these are guidelines para sa safekeeping ng tao. We understand emergency yon talaga to procure vaccines. Pero naglagay naman kayo ng guidelines para hindi tayo magkamali. Even if it's emergency, dapat mas cautious tayo, kaya may monitoring na good. And sa FOI po namin, walang monitoring na nangyari. We got the information from the DOH itself. They admitted that they're not monitoring those who were vaccinated and not vaccinated. So FOI lang po yun na sa freedom of information, hindi sila nag-monitor talaga.
Yeah, in the last hearing, we have, I think the two last hearing, we discussed the effort that you have undergone, no? And you have received I don't think it's a zero response, but it's on a negative response.
Yes.
Under ng ano yan, Pharmacovigilance? Saan kayo sumula? Sa FDA? Or
FDA, DOH, actually marami. lahat ng agencies concerned. Tapos ang common theme ng sagot nila is we don't have the data on that.
Hindi, siguro, Secretary Duque.
It behooves upon us, Mr. Chairman, that there probably is some monitoring because FDA has given us a list. Kung walang monitoring, how did FDA generate the list of about 113,000 adverse events following immunization? So I just want to debunk that notion that wala nagmo-monitor because in fact, by law, is there. Otherwise, the department is accountable. If
Basta it happened after the vaccination. So hindi kailangan yung i-investigate, pero in the meantime na in-investigate, it should be supposedly i-suspend ng rollout. So hindi necessary na ano po.
Sinabi mo no, after 2 adverse.
Yes, Your
Who
Honor.
will say na nagkadalawang adverse effect? Who will say that?
Eh,
Who will be the decision maker na nagkadalawang adverse effect? Will it be DOH and that committee that you're
Your Honor,
referring to?
hindi sinulat po dun sa portal ng DOH, but from the last hearing, sinabi po ng FDA that they regularly report to DOH na may mga adverse effects.
So nag-report ang FDA
Yes,
sa
regularly
DOH during that time.
Yes, Your
Yes,
Honor.
but nagre-report sila, but who has that final say na adverse effect ba siya o hindi? I mean, I'm asking you po for the
Yes.
simple reason that in the future, pag magsusunod kami ng batas, hopefully hindi na kailangan
Yes, Your
Hopefully
Honor.
wala nang ganito.
Yes, Your Honor.
But if that happens again, kami nga nagsulat noon, sinabi namin yung dalawang adverse effect.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, gusto ko na malaman may flaw ba dun sa language or the way it was written. So, based on that, sino ang magde-decide? Hindi FDA because nagre-report sila
Yes,
sa
Your
DOH. Ano? So, mali ba
Actually,
yung writing na yun? It should have been more precise.
Your Honor, dapat walang naka-define kung sino yung magka-qualify ng adverse effects.
Yes.
So, ang kiniklaim ng DOH, kailangan from the experts of the government.
Yes. From your point of view and from your group,
Yes, sir.
based on your study, sino dapat ang nag-determine ng ibig sabihin ng adverse effect and what is the meaning of an adverse effect? Para alam lang namin po.
Yes, Your Honor.
I hope we don't have to
Yes, Your Honor.
do another law on this in the
Yes,
future.
Your Honor.
Ayaw natin, but we want some guidelines already now.
Yes. Better siguro kung meron from private clinicians and
Yes.
from the government para merong hindi monopolize ng isang
Yes.
site yung determination of adverse effects. Na dapat wala rin conflict of interest kasi
Pero
marami
attorney,
kasi-
saan mo nakuha yung...
Patapusin mo lang. Patapusin mo lang.
Yeah.
Conflict of interest.
Okay.
raw.
Well, ano ko lang, may relasyon doon sa sinasabi
Yes,
mo.
yes, sir.
So when you told us a while ago that there need to be 2 events that happen, then after that it should be suspended.
Yes, sir.
It was written on the reply box that you have received.
Hindi, sa ano po yun? Sa portal po ng DOH.
Yes, I know. Yung portal nga ng DOH. So they have said that
That they will suspend
after.
after 2 adverse
yes,
effects.
So
Adverse
in
events.
that case,
Ang question nga, who will determine?
Wala
na
pong-
adverse?
if that was the advice of the DOH, primarily galing sa DOH yun.
Yes,
Dapat
dapat
sinasabi
sinunod
ng
nila.
authority, dapat hindi lang DOH. In the future,
Mm.
that body that decides ano yung adverse effect, dapat may participation rin yung private practitioners.
Hindi po. Ang unang point ko po doon is ang DOH po nag-come up ng protocol na yun to suspend after 2 adverse effects.
Okay.
So, wala namang qualification kung anong adverse effects. Nahilo, that's an adverse effect. Kung
Yes.
namatay, that's an adverse effect. So, walang qualification. Any adverse effect should be investigated.
Hindi, that's the reason why I'm asking
Yes,
kung if it was indeed received by your group that the reply of the DOH was exactly that after 2 adverse effect, there will be suspension.
Hindi na po namin in-FOI yun kasi nasa website po ng
Oh,
DOH.
nasa website. Is it really
Yes,
in
nasa
the
website
website?
po ng DOH.
Yusek Tayan.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I don't know where Attorney Sogolon got his information because earlier you said it was not from the Department of Health, but it was in another hearing.
No.
Can you confirm?
No. You got it wrong. Sorry, I have to
Address it
address,
to the,
yes,
the
yes.
chairman, please.
Ang sinasabi ko po, in the portal of the DOH, sinabi nila that the 2 or more adverse events following inoculation, magkakaroon ng suspension of the rollout. Now, tinatay up ko po to doon sa sinabi ng representative ng FDA during the last hearing na meron naman talaga sang nire-report nila yung adverse effects, adverse events regularly sa DOH. Ang hinahanap po namin, Bakit walang naging suspension of the rollout?
Because sino nga magde-determine? That was what I was
Hindi,
asking you.
sinabit po ng FDA, sila po yung nag-determine that time.
Oh, FDA, kayo nagde-determine under the kayo magde-determine kung adverse yung effect, hindi DOH.
Basically, Mr. Chair, we just do the
Yes.
reportorial, sir. We transfer.
Repertorial lang.
Yes
But
po.
who determines kung adverse yung
We
effect?
submit it to the NIFIC po.
O di, 2 days, two events, no? Eh dapat suspended na yung yung product na yon. But it never happened because we have seen in a lot of videos that you presented na after ng vaccination, meron talagang mga nahihilo, meron talagang sumakit ang ulo, whatever, di ba? So anyway,
Mr.
maganda po
Chairman,
yung topic natin that we have
Let me ask
discussed.
Secretary
No?
Duque.
Sige,
Just
Secretary
very
Duque.
quickly, Mr. Chairman, I think with all due respect, it's going to be foolhardy naman just because nahilo, may nangyaring ganito. It's correct to investigate, and our protocol is very clear on the ways to handle the investigation of such adverse events. But to suspend it, stop everything just because of this, I don't think that is the intent of the national vaccination program. It's really just to zero in on a particular individual who received the vaccination and had manifested adverse effects. Purportedly, syempre, gusto mo isipin, baka bakuna, di ba? So you have to be, yung prudence, no? That you want to investigate, ano ba ang cost nito? But if nakita mo na hindi naman dahil, kasi may mga tao talaga nahihilo, ma-injection na lang, nahihilo, no? May mga ganun, mga minor adverse events, no? But it's not enough justification to say we suspend the entire program. I think that is not the intent of the law, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Attorney Tanya Lat of Legal Light Workers for Life and Liberty. Mr. Chairman, it's unfortunate that Secretary Duque was not present at the last hearing because at the last hearing we presented videos of people collapsing and dying shortly after being inoculated. There are videos that have been recorded by concerned citizens. They have fed that information to us. During the first hearing that Secretary Duque was here, we personally handed him copies of pinaslagas. Concerned citizens have been compiling reports of people dying either on the day itself, a few days after, a week after, a month after. And we have been capturing screenshots of their Facebook posts. Some of the people themselves have said shortly before their death, this happened because of the vaccine. Now we have been experiencing massive censorship on Facebook, Mr. Chairman. Last hearing, we tried to share the video that was aired here in Congress. Facebook did not allow us to share it. We experienced multiple times it being shared on Facebook or in Facebook Messenger, lumalabas po, could not send. And eventually those posts were deleted. Many members of Lunas Filipinas and CDCPH over the last 3 years have had their Facebook accounts blocked or removed because of our attempts to bring this to the public, Your Honor. We also wish to point out that Deng Baksha happened not so long ago, and it took 50 deaths of innocent children for the DOH to order a stoppage of the rollout. 50 deaths. Here, there are at least almost 3,000 deaths. But from our reports, Your Honor, it appears that the deaths and the injuries are massively underreported.
Attorney, pasensya na, but could I ask you first? First of all, you've documented in the Philippines that immediately after inoculation passed away. You have documented that.
There are concerned citizens that have sent us videos. So
Videos.
people being vaccinated, and then shortly after, pinapakita po, they collapse at the vaccination site, and then later on, they reported that they have died.
Yes, mga estimate, mga ilan to?
I honestly cannot say, Mr. Chair, because these are anecdotal. We are just a volunteer group, Your Honor.
Yes.
We have no resources to document.
I get your point.
And the video that was shown last hearing was really a volunteer effort. We have made repeated attempts, Your Honor, to bring this to light. We filed a Supreme Court case. The lead petitioner is here. Mr. Nicanor Perlas has been writing to Secretary Duque as early as October 2021, warning him about the dangers of the vaccine. We have presented these in court. We have copies of the Pfizer report, 9 pages of adverse events documented, and they were only released in the United States because of a Freedom of Information request. Unfortunately, here in the Philippines, our agencies have been deaf, blind, and mute, and the media has been silent on this issue of people dying from the vaccines.
Attorney, could I recognize the lady behind you're Miss Sally?
Yes, I'm Sally Clark, and I'm working with Lunas Filipinas on a
Yes.
volunteer basis. I've also been last hearing. I presented that the Philippines has data in the US VAERS system. These are foreign reports. Most of the foreign reports received to VAERS have been submitted by the Philippines FDA to the vaccine manufacturers, who then submitted them to VAERS. These are all public domain. In the VAERS system, from Pfizer, Moderna, and Janssen, there have been reported 1,158 deaths and more than around nearly 8,000 adverse reactions. This is in the US VAERS system. The difference for this system is that we can read the accounts and we could see what happened, because it gives us the time lag between when the person was vaccinated and when they died or when they had an adverse reaction. And the peak adverse reaction happens on day 0 to 2 following vaccination. And many of these accounts include accounts of people who died the same day as they were walking out of the vaccination center, or they were found dead the next morning, or they were found dead within several days. These accounts can all be read. I have read every single one of the accounts in the VAERS. And as I said, most of these have a Philippines FDA reference number, meaning they passed through the Philippines FDA. The Philippines FDA has submitted first weekly reports, then monthly, and then quarterly reports. The last report from FDA came out as of the 31st of December, 2023. And the FDA said they would not be releasing any further reports unless required. However, the FDA's, ever since they started issuing these reports on the 4th of April, 2021. At that time, there were several deaths. By the end of April, there was already, I think, 35 deaths. By the end of December, there were nearly 3,000 deaths in their system. And since the start of the vaccination campaign, the wording in their reports remain exactly the same. The benefits outweigh the risk for most persons. And in terms of investigating the adverse reactions, they have a section which discusses. And most of the recognized adverse reactions did not change over months. So they said, this reaction, we have, for example, 500 reactions. 2 of them are vaccinated, are recognized as product related. 498 are still under investigation. And that did not change for many, many months. So I have been reviewing the FDA reports ever since they came out. So if you have any questions, I could probably answer them. Thank you.
And the chair would like to recognize as well the man beside you. What's his name? Can you kindly introduce
Yes.
yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chair. My name is Nicanor Perlas. I'm the lead petitioner versus the IATF in the case in the Supreme Court. At the same time, I'm the founder and lead researcher of COVID Call to Humanity, which has been documenting this issue in the last 4 years. We've published over 2,000 articles. And I have here before me, Mr. Chair, a copy of which I will submit for the record if you're permitted. It's a copy of the open letter to President Duterte in April 18, 2020, already advising him that the science and the global experience was not showing that COVID was actual threat. That was April 18, 2020. He ignored it. And then the vaccinations came and the deaths were becoming very clear. And in October 18, I issued 2021 a cease and desist with a letter with notice of liability to all the heads of government, executive, legislative, and judiciary. So these are cabinet members, the president, vice president, the military, everybody, documenting in 76 pages all the scientific evidence that the vaccines do not work, they actually kill. There has been fraud in the definition of vaccines, the vaccinated, for example, Mr. Chair. CDC, US, defined a person as unvaccinated if after 2 doses, 14 days after 2 doses. So in other words, you got vaccinated, but you're not considered vaccinated, but you are unvaccinated. So therefore, if you die within that period, you're considered an unvaccinated person who died. This is just one of the fraud. Then also admitted by DOH in a Freedom of Information request that I made, they actually, the RT-PCR test, there's a cycle threshold usage of 35 and above, Well, it is known in the medical and scientific literature, if the RT-PCR tests are rated 35 and 45 cycles, it's 95% inaccurate. You're going to get a lot of false positives. So therefore, what that means, Mr. Chair, is that people, let's say, who got into an accident and they died, not because of a disease, then they will test positive based on the RT-PCR test of high cycles. They will be branded as dead through COVID. And I know this from the governor of Cebu, who personally told me, and it's here in the cease and desist document, they have a lot of cases because there are over 700,000 pesos reward for every hospital that will put this COVID there. So the government incentivized fraud, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just also want to point out that already the global estimate based on hard data, when I say hard data, is like 99% probability, anywhere from 13 to 17 million have died around the world from the vaccines. There are over 1,000 studies, scientific peer-reviewed, that have come out that have shown the serious side effects of these vaccines. And this thing is not stopping because the regulatory agencies, also in connection with WHO, they've gone into a kind of even more fraudulent activity. For example, Mr. Chair, CDC just approved early last year, what's called the Future Framework, which means to say they will approve an experimental vaccine in 2 days or 1 week. It normally takes 12 years, Mr. Chair, to approve a vaccine for its safety and efficacy. But now they've authorized it based on the mRNA technology, which is now proven to be really highly dangerous, and it actually modifies the genetic system of everybody that gets it. Bill Gates himself said he's really excited with modified RNA because it will make the human being a manufacturer of the toxic of the spike proteins that they've been found to be really toxic even without the virus. So this is the reason why there's so many deaths, Mr. Chair. And the U.S. Senate basically and House a few months ago confirmed in hearings that the reason why it's so deadly, the COVID vaccines were bioweapons. So
Oh.
this is the reason. They actually did genetic engineering. They modified it. They transferred genetic segments from a normal coronavirus and so on. This is a big issue that's coming out now because if they did that, this means to say the reason why there's so much fraud in this issue is that there was an intended murder of people. I cannot say it in any other way because the science has been very clear. And I must say this also, Mr. Chair, that the Twitter files have now been exposed by Elon Musk, who took over Twitter files, and there a whole swath of CIA, FBI involvement in the actual censorship. And they work through what's called the Trusted News Initiative. The reason why we don't get this story in the mainstream media here, they rely mostly on wire services like AP, Reuters, AFP. They're part of a global network that were paid by the US government to actually censor information about what's happening in the world. So this is a much bigger fraud, Mr. Chair. If you're going to move forward to understand this, we have to understand that the science of the previous policy, for example, like over 100 studies on lockdowns, no benefits. Masks, even the WHO before said the masks do not work.
Okay.
Yet they forced it.
So thank you so much, Mr. Perlas. No, I read certain article as well, no, with regards to this theory, no, conspiracy theory, no. We all know what's happening and who are the people behind the global elites and things like that. And what we are into right now is yung reality right now that so many have been dying in this country, and all over the world. But in correlation with the vaccine, directly or indirectly, somehow part of it we can link it, but not the
Yes.
totality of the whole picture.
Okay.
But what we are trying to establish in this hearing is for us to have those people responsible and for us to move forward on a bigger scale, considering that we have seen effort on the world scale, that another pandemic will hit us. And if we're going to have the same kind of health protocol that will be dictated upon to us by the WHO, well, I think we, the members of this committee and the legislative, have to work all together in order to abate this kind of situation.